Mrs. Crime, Mr. Wade, bringing you the stories. Stay tuned for a lot more.
Ed Gein was a kind of meek, unremarkable man. There's something eerie about that.
Ed Gein, pet spire, Psycho, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Ed Gein was Norman Bates, and Norman Bates was Ed Gein.
Edward Theodore Gein, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield or the Plainfield Ghoul, was an American murderer, suspected serial killer, and body snatcher. Crimes committed around his hometown of Plainfield, Wisconsin gathered widespread notoriety in 1957 after authorities discovered that he had exhumed corpses from local graveyards and fashioned keepsakes from their bones and skin. He also has confessed to killing 2 women, tavern owner Mary Hogan in 1954 and hardware store owner Bernice Warden in 1957. Edward Gein was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin on August 27, 1906, the second of 2 boys of George Philip Gein and Augusta Wilhelmine Gein. Gein had an elder brother named Henry. Miss Augusta, their mom, frequently would preach to her sons about the imminent mortality of the world, the evil of drinking, and her belief that all women were naturally promiscuous and instruments of the devil. Every other afternoon, she would take time to read to them the Bible, usually selecting verses from the Old Testament and the book of Revelations concerning death, murder, and divine retribution. Despite her abuse, her son, Mr. Gein, idolized her very much and became very obsessed with his mother. Mr. Gein left home for school. Outside of school, he spent most of his time doing chores of the farm. Gein was shy. Classmates and teachers remembered him as having strange mannerisms, such as seemingly random laughing at his own personal jokes. To make matters worse, Augusta punished him whenever he tried to make friends. Despite his poor social development, Gein did fairly well in school, especially in reading. On April 1st, 1940, Mr. Gein's father died of heart failure caused by his alcoholism at the age of 66. So Ed and his brother Henry began doing the odd jobs around town to help keep living expenses. On May 16, 1944, Ed was burning away marsh vegetation on a property. The fire got out of control, drawing the attention of the local fire department. By the end of the day, the fire had been extinguished and all the firefighters had gone. Later, Ed reported his brother Henry was missing. With lanterns and flashlights, a search party began for the 43-year-old Mr. Henry, whose dead body was found lying face down. Apparently, he had been dead for some time, and it appeared that the cause of the death was heart failure, since he had not been burned or injured otherwise. It was later reported by a reporter that Henry had bruises on top of his head. Police dismissed the possibility of foul play, and the county coroner later officially listed asphyxiation as a cause of death. The authorities accepted the theory, but no official investigation was conducted, and an autopsy was not performed. Those that studied the case wrote that in retrospect, it was possible and most likely that Henry's death was the result of the Cain and Abel aspect of this case. With Mr. Gein's brother Henry now deceased, Him and his mom, Augusta, were now alone. Augusta had a paralyzing stroke shortly after the death of her son, and Mr. Gein devoted himself to taking care of her. In soon time coming, Miss Augusta had a second stroke, and later her body began to deteriorate very rapidly. Augusta died on December 29th, 1945, at the age of 67. Ed was devastated by her death. In his own words, he said that everything lost his only friend and his one true love, and he was absolutely now alone in the world. Mr. Ed Gein held on to the farm and earned money from odd jobs. He boarded up rooms his mom used to use, including the upstairs, downstairs parlor, and the living room, leaving them completely untouched, while the rest of the house became increasingly squalid, dirty. These rooms remained pristine. Mr. Gein now lived in a small room next to the kitchen. Around this time, he got deeply infused in different magazines like pulp magazines, cannibals, and Nazis. Also a magazine that has selected tattooed prisoners for death in order to fashion lampshades and other items from their skins. On the morning of November 16th, 1957, 58-year-old Plainfield hardware store owner Bernice Warden disappeared. The hardware store truck was last seen driving out of the rear of the building around 9:30 a.m. The hardware store saw few customers that entire day. Some area residents believe that this was because of deer hunting season. Wander's son, Deputy Sheriff, entered the store around 5 o'clock p.m. to find the cash register open and bloodstains on the floor. During the investigation, they found out Mr. Gein had been in the store and was to have returned the next morning for a gallon of antifreeze. A sales slip for the antifreeze was the last receipt written by Miss Warden on the morning that she disappeared. That evening, Mr. Gein was arrested at West Plainfield grocery store. During the investigations at Mr. Gein's house, a sheriff deputy discovered the body of Miss Warden's decapitated body in a shed on Gein's property. She was hung upside down by her legs with a crossbar at her ankles and ropes at her wrist. The torso was dressed out like a deer. She had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, and all the mutilations were made after her death. Searching the house, the authorities found whole human bones and fragments, a wastebasket made of human skin covering several chairs, skulls on his bedpost, female skulls, some with tops sewn off, bows made from human skulls, a corset made from a female torso, skin from shoulders to waist, leggings made from human leg skin, mask made from the skin of female heads, Mary Hogan's face mask in a paper bag, Mary Hogan's skull in a box, Bernice Warden's entire head in a burlap sack, Bernice Warden's heart in a plastic bag in front of Mr. Gein's potbelly stove, 9 vulvae in a shoebox, a young girl's dress, and the vulvas of 2 females judged to have been about 15 years old, a belt made from female human nipples, 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face, and fingernails from female fingers. Gein told investigators that between the year 1947 and 1952, he made as many as 40 nocturnal visits to 3 local graveyards to exhume recently buried bodies while he was in a dazed-like state of mind. On about 30 of those visits, he said that he came out of the dazed state of mind standing in the cemetery, left the grave in good order, and returned home empty-handed. On other occasions, he would dig up the graves of recently buried middle-aged women in thought resembled his mother, and took the bodies home where he tanned their skins to make his paraphernalia. Mr. Gein stated soon after his mother's death, he began to create a woman's suit so that he could be his mother, to literally crawl into her skin. He denied having sex with the bodies he exhumed, explaining they smelled too bad. During the state crime laboratory interrogation, Gein also admitted to shooting 51-year-old Mary Hogan, and Lavin owner missing since December 8th, 1954, whose head was found in his house, but he later denied memory of details of her death. A 16-year-old youth whose parents were friends of Mr. Gein and who attended baseball games and movies with him, reported that Mr. Gein kept shrunken heads in his house, which he had described as a relic sent by a cousin who had served in the Philippines during World War II. Upon investigation by the police, these were determined to be human facial skins carefully peeled from corpses and used by Mr. Gein as a mask. During the trial in 1968, doctors determined Mr. Gein was mentally unable to confer with counsel and to participate in the defense. The trial began on November 7, 1968 and lasted 1 week. At a request by the defense, Mr. Gein's trial was held without a jury. Mr. Gein's house, 195 acres, property was appraised at $4,700, equivalent to $48,000 in the year 2022. His possessions were scheduled to be auctioned on March 30th, 1958. Arson was suspected of burning down the house, but the cause of the fire was never officially determined. Just as well, his Ford sedan, which he used to haul the bodies of all his victims, was sold at a public auction for $760 to the carnival sideshow operator Bunny Gibbons. Gibbons charged carnival people 25 cents admission to walk in to see it. On November 21st, 1957, Mr. Gein was arraigned on 1 count of first-degree murder in Washara County Court, where he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and found mentally incompetent, thus until a fair trial. He was sent to the Central State Hospital for the criminally insane, now the Dodge Correctional Institution, a maximum security facility in Wuhan, and later transferred to the Mendola State Hospital in Madison. Mr. Gein died at the Mendola Mental Health Institute due to respiratory failure secondary to lung cancer on July 26, 1984, at the age of 77. Over the years, souvenir seekers chipped pieces from his gravestone at the Plainfield Cemetery until the stone itself was stolen in the year 2000. It was recovered in June 2001 near Seattle, Washington, and was placed in storage at the Washara County Sheriff's Department. The gravesite itself is now unmarked, but not unknown. Mr. Gein is interred between his parents and brother in the cemetery. I hope you guys enjoy this unfortunate story to all the victims murdered by Mr. Edward Gein. A lot more from Tombstone Whispers coming from Mr. Wade and Mrs. Crime. Until then, we bring it to you.